Hey guys, welcome back and congrats to all the new grads. Now's the hard part, finding a job. I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything in this video because you guys deserve to have an honest perspective on your job prospects. Now, I feel like the past few years were extremely tough on new grads because of the pandemic, but honestly, I think students who are graduating this year in 2023 may still be at a disadvantage. If there was any portion of your schooling that was disrupted because of the pandemic, you didn't get the full experience, but you got this. I think what's hard is that you are competing for jobs with not only your fellow graduates, but also graduates all across the country, like a fresh new batch of dentists. Plus, there are other dentists who are not necessarily new grads, who have years of experience and happen to be looking for a job at the same time. So how do you compare against them? This could result in a lot of doubt. That's the bad news. The good news is that doubt and uncertainty when you're starting your career are quite normal. Like I said, I felt this, I did a residency, and I still felt paralyzed by uncertainty. I was like, okay, this school bubble, I want to stay in it. Maybe I should specialize. I just don't feel ready for this huge responsibility of being like a full-blown dentist. And I do want to say that even though you may not have gotten every penny dollar's worth of your very, very expensive education, you guys will be just fine. Everyone will be fine. Most of you have enough of the basics to start your careers. So here are a few tips to get you going, from practice owner to new dentist. And I did a video like this a few years ago. You guys said it was really helpful, so here we are again. So the first tip is to get a job on your resume ASAP. If there's nothing there, you have no negotiating power. Honestly, the types of jobs that take new grads are pretty crappy usually. Like my first job was bad. bad. Unless you have like some sort of hookup or you did some networking on your own, it's usually pretty bad. But remember that on your resume, whether that job was crappy or not, they are still jobs. It still shows that you have some sort of experience. And most importantly, it is a point at which you can start negotiating your pay. Now, in my opinion, it's better to start working than not to work and let your skills get rusty. So again, get that job on your resume. Nobody says that your first job needs to be the one. Ideally speaking, it's good to keep that first job on your resume for as long as possible. But this is what I did because I was working the ladder. While my friends were getting 5-day commitments at one job, I was actually very jealous about this because I wanted that as well, but I couldn't find one. Inadvertently, I got multiple jobs. I got 2 days here and 3 days here, and that was really helpful for me. This way, if you ever leave a job or you outgrow a job, you have a few days at another job that can tide you over so that you can pay rent and you can take your time replacing those days. The only time I took a full-time position at one job is after working there for a while, knowing that I liked it there, and then I utilized the other job that I had that I was leaving as leverage for negotiating my pay. Now, tip number 2 is to do research on the office that you're interviewing at. This is going to help you present yourselves in the best light. There's nothing deceptive about this because every job is looking for someone different, someone very specific to fit into their culture. So tailor your interview to be the person that they're looking for. I'll even look at their Yelp reviews to see what people are saying about them. Obviously, if you don't even like that practice after looking at their Yelp reviews and you don't agree with that style of practice, like their Yelp reviews are horrible, then you probably may not want to interview there. Let them know that you cancel. But honestly, most of you guys don't really know who you are yet professionally. So I always say in the beginning, keep an open mind. You never know what job you may end up liking. For example, I always said I would never do cosmetic dentistry or own my own dental practice. Yet here I am doing both. So embrace all experiences in the first few years. The next tip is don't over-exaggerate at your interview. They will ask you things like, how quickly can you do a crown? But they also know that you have no idea how quickly you can do a crown without getting 10,000 checks from faculty. Even if you went to residency, like I went to residency and we were still going at a much slower pace than private practice. My advice is not to lie about how fast you can do things. Anything you say, you're gonna be held to. So like you say that you could do a crown in 2 hours, when you show up for your first day at work, your crowns are gonna be 2 hours long. That's the amount of time that you'll have. So you'll have to like perform. Instead, I think it's reasonable to say something like, I can do a crown in 2.5 hours, but I know with practice, I can do them in 1.5 hours. That's so reasonable. Between an hour and a half is how fast I do them now, if you need a reference. This is actually considered slow for me because I did work in a very fast-paced environment before I worked for myself. I used to do post, build-up, crown, temp in an hour when I was working in the fast-paced environment, which I'm literally blocking out of my memory now. But an hour and a half is very, very solid. If you can do an hour and a half, I don't think anyone can complain that you are a slowpoke. And just to give you another reference, even though I consider this to be very slow, when my associate was doing crowns, she got 2 hours to do every crown. And it's just because that's how much time she needed to do a good work, and I preferred her to do good work than to rush herself too much. Also, she had 10 years of experience. So faster does not necessarily mean you have more experience. It's just the pace that you're most comfortable working at. Ultimately, it's gonna be a fine balance between pushing yourself to be faster, but working at a pace you need to do a good job so that you can sleep well at night and develop good relationships with your patients. The next tip is to realize that there is much to learn that you never learned in dental school. There is new technology, and every office functions differently. You may have not had exposure to a lot of things and may not know how to do them, but don't be discouraged because you will learn fast. Like young people, you guys learn these things really, really fast. Ultimately, doctors will be hiring for attitude and personality since experience is all at a kind of level playing field between all the graduates. Tip number 5, you gotta get paid for that working interview. I don't want any of you guys to go do a free working interview. That is not how this works. Your time is valuable. You are a doctor, you get paid. Even if it's like an hour of time, you get paid. It doesn't need to be the full amount, but you get paid. Next tip is to put your resume out every single week, even to jobs that you are completely underqualified for. You never know. Again, people are hiring for attitude, not for experience. Number 7 is to put a picture on your resume. I know this is controversial, but I like to put a face to a name. You should also definitely write a cover letter, like a really, really good cover letter. I know that I was hired off my cover letter in the beginning because, to be frank, my resume didn't really have too many things on it, and I'm sure a lot of my competitors also had not that much on their resumes, but that cover letter sealed the deal. The interviewer at the time actually told me how impressed he was by my cover letter, and that is why I got the job. So good cover letter is not just about like, I got the best grades in school, I can speak 10 languages. It helps an employer know what you stand for in the absence of dentistry, and that is super powerful. Next tip is to leverage your social media. If your social media is really good, list it. A lot of doctors are older and want young kids who can help them grow the practice social media these days. If you don't have a dental focused social media and your public one is questionable, you may want to private it until after you find a job. And if you ever want to learn how to do Instagram for dentists, I have a free Discord group full of dental professionals who are trying to learn Instagram as well. And I will link that down below. I also have a course that you can take on how to build a professional dental Instagram that brings in patients. Number 9 is contracts. If you are signing a contract for your very first time, make sure that you have a few different sets of eyeballs look at it. People with experience in the industry and also people who are maybe on the legal side, people that you trust. Remember that contracts will always be written to favor the employer and not you. So if there's something that you do not agree with, you need to fight for that before you start working there, before you sign anything. Once you get that offer or that contract in front of you, remember that you are in the negotiation phase. You got the job, you got the offer. Now it's time to go hard with the negotiations. And remember that you are also interviewing this job to see if it's a good fit for you. A few key things I would want to know is, how busy is the practice? Are you going to be sitting there with an empty schedule, or is there enough work to go around? I would also want to know what kind of insurances the office takes if they accept HMO, for example. And the reason that matters is because if they do accept HMO, even if your schedule is packed to the rim, you still may not be able to be as productive as a lighter schedule at a fee-for-service office, because fee-for-service generally charges more per procedure for each patient. By the way, I'm not saying that it's not possible to be productive at an HMO office, but I just wanted to be clear here that there are different ways to look at productivity. And if you don't know the difference in the beginning, that's also okay. I've worked at all of these different types of offices. As you start working, you will figure out what style you like the best. The third thing I would look at is if you are paid based off collections or production. If you're paid based off of collections, you would want to know how good the office is at collecting. Some offices are frankly not very good at collecting money, and they chase the money around, while there are other offices like mine that are very, very good at collecting every single dollar and making sure insurance pays. So if you're being paid off of collections, this is very important to know. Along those lines, who pays for the lab fee? The owner sometimes has the associate pay for a portion of the lab fee. Every office is a little different, so these are all negotiable things. But I will say that if you're doing Invisalign or cosmetic procedures, those tend to have higher lab fees, and the owner may negotiate separately from the regular lab fees for you to pay a portion of those. I've seen that. I think that's common, but every office is different. Okay, so those are the few key things you got to look at. Whatever your contract looks like, make sure to have it reviewed by someone that you trust, and make sure that it looks legit before you sign it. Okay, I know this video is getting long, but let's talk a little bit about the truth of this situation here. You guys are all graduating, you're new, very little negotiating power, and most of you guys are going to need an element of mentorship at your first job. Don't be discouraged. I believe that most doctors who are hiring people right now from the past few years understand that there is going to be some hand-holding just because of the nature of the pandemic and the way the school system was. You know, my husband is an owner at a DSO, and they're all very aware. Everyone's very aware. So they understand that they are investing into your growth. But I want to give you the full picture here. You guys may not be business owners yet, but I want you to understand the dynamic of what this mentorship really means. On the one hand, you are asking to be paid or compensated as a doctor without being fully productive yet. I find a lot of new dentists expect to be compensated just as much as their peers that have years of experience and a track record of producing. When it comes to negotiating your pay, remember that an owner is taking on a lot of responsibility by hiring you. You're new, you don't have the experience. They're investing in your growth, mentoring you, protecting you from mistakes, and literally covering your ass when you make mistakes on their patients. And these things directly impact the reputation of the doctor and that practice. So, I know you guys don't need to necessarily know all this, but you have to understand the reality of this situation. Many doctors are willing to make this investment if you are the right fit for their practice. But in return, they are hoping that you stay for a long time, grow with the practice, and become a valued member of the team, which I think is reasonable. Now, what you'll notice with most new doctor contracts is that there is a 3 to 6 month base pay period where if you show up to work, you get paid a base no matter, even if you didn't hardly see any patients that day. This is essentially a grace period where an owner is agreeing to pay for you and is usually taking a loss. They're investing in your growth. I want you to be very, very, very aware of that. It's not something to take advantage of. That's not cool. So, understanding this, bust your ass during your grace period. Make the most of that grace period because eventually it will be gone. The reality of most dental positions is that we are paid based on how much we can produce. If you cannot learn to produce even your base pay for the day, you have to consider why an office would continue to employ you. And this grace period is a time when you want to start picking up your speed, working on your quality, and calibrating with the standards set at the office, not sitting on your phone on Instagram waiting for things to happen. So, okay, I'm just saying this because we're all professionals here and we all have to know the situation and what's going on. All right, heavy stuff. Other end of the spectrum is whether you graduated yesterday or have 5 years of experience. One of the things that was hardest for me is to realize that I was a full-fledged doctor. Yeah, so there's no transition time where you're like, it's your first day and you're like, oops, ha ha ha, it's my first day, forgive me for making this huge major mistake. That was really, really hard for me. If you're a perfectionist, if you're very hard on yourself, that is a huge realization to come by, is you're not gonna get a pass. And I think even harder is that the patients don't really care if you just graduated. In fact, they don't even want to see you if you just graduated. So if you make a mistake, it's even worse. Yeah, a doctor with 0 experience doesn't have less responsibility than a doctor with 5 years of experience. So when an owner covers your butt, you gotta be really thankful for that. At that same token, this is your life. If a job or position is not the right fit for you, you don't owe it to anybody to drag things out. I'm not trying to guilt you into staying at a place. you should still reserve all of the control of your career where you don't stay anywhere extra long because you feel bad for being there. I don't want that either. If it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. You have to make the best decision for you and your career. Staying at a place extra long is not actually good for either of you. That owner may have invested a lot of time and energy into you, but if it's not a good long-term fit, that owner is probably wanting to find somebody who is a good long-term fit. So it's best to leave amicably, put in your 2 weeks notice or however long you're able to give, and leave on good terms. The truth of the matter is that there will be many jobs along the way that feel good and then turn sour. And when that happens, it's okay to leave. Don't imprison yourself. So finding a new job is a dance, as you can see. You can execute better if you understand what's in it for both parties. And that's why I'm sharing both, your guys' perspective and our perspective over here so that you guys can reach a good mutual relationship understanding. I know that from where you're sitting, it may feel that the odds are totally not in your favor right now, but remember that you are in control of your career and that everything is a two-way street. When they interview you, you are also interviewing them. If the job doesn't go as initially presented, you can and should leave. So my biggest tip, number 10, is find a way to bring value and differentiate yourself. When I first started out, I bought my own rotary instruments for root canals, which gave me a leg up. I realized when I was interviewing at all these jobs that they would ask me, can you do molar root canals? And I was like, yeah. But I figured everyone was saying that. So I got all my own tools so that I could say something beyond that. I could say, yes, I do molar root canals. Plus, I am so legit, I have all these tools that I can bring if you don't happen to have these tools. Those offices had the tools, but it just showed them that I was not so much talk, like I could actually do the root canals. Just giving that example because there are ways to get a leg up. And once you realize what employers are looking for, you can make yourself irreplaceable. All right, if you found this helpful, hit the thumbs up, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.